Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Please start by saying welcome both to you, to our staff from the CMC who have joined us remotely, and also to the students that are here in the room. Remember that the session will be recorded so you can share it with your fellow classmates later on, and they will be able to enjoy the content that Cesar is going to share. Cesar, as many of you may have looked up, he is a consultant, a principal at Arthur D. Little. He works in between Mexico and Texas, and also has a long experience within the consulting area. He had his own energy consulting company, plus he has been a professor, which definitely will enable him to give us that insight from an academic perspective, knowing what we as students go through. So Cesar, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you, Peter, for this initiative. I really salute this idea of connecting with alums, and especially I think this is a very time-saving initiative because I had a lot of requests from students asking me, can you share some of your experiences in consulting? And oftentimes, if you join consulting, you'll see how busy our life is, and oftentimes I haven't talked to my mother since Sunday, for example. So let alone spend 30 minutes having a conversation about how life in consulting is. So I think this is great. This saves time and is very efficient both for the students and for the alums. So great initiative, and very happy to be here.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much, Cesar, for your words. We'll definitely keep fostering this type of events to help you, help others, and save time. So given our scenario, let's start by saying which are the responsibilities you have in your current role as a principal for Arthur D. Little.
Okay, well, I'm currently the leader of Arthur D. Little in Mexico, and my role is I have so many hats, really, but I would stick to three roles. One of them is company building. I am in charge of opening the office in Mexico City, and training the staff and doing everything that a lot of administrative stuff to get the office set up in the country. Number two is implementing projects. I do consulting firms have different degrees of principal involvement into projects, and Arthur D. Little happens to be one of those firms that principals really get involved into the implementation of a project. So I am at least 50% at the client side, having meetings with them and overseeing the product of consultants and analysts, and making sure it's up to standards. And I also dedicated a lot of time to business development, to reach out to my contacts and see what the problems are in their industries and whether we can help them, and looking into our databases if we have qualifications on the problems they have, and preparing proposals. So that's my life. That's about 12 to probably 14 hours a day.
Wow, that is a lot of time commitment, and it sounds like your role at Arthur D. Little is very hands-on. You're working not only with managing the office and making sure that the office runs, but also you're working with bringing business and making sure that those businesses are attended with the highest level of quality to support that relationship, which is not only time-consuming, but very energy-consuming. And also
correct.
A set of skills which can go from the technical to the soft skills. And that brings me to the next question. Which set of skills in terms of technical and soft skills would you recommend a student interested in consulting to polish, to make stronger?
Oh, definitely. I think soft skills are really misunderstood and not valued as much as they should. And being a professor at negotiation, one of the things that I always tell my students is anything you will get in life, you will get it from a person. You will not get it from a system or from artificial intelligence yet. It's never late to start your people relationship skills. So always, um, you know, I think soft skills such as negotiation, leadership, ability to sell, ability to convince, are really, really good skills that will take you to the next step. Because I mean, a ton of people can do excellent models, and they can do Excels, and they can do presentations, at least in PowerPoint. But I mean, how about sitting in front of a class? How about interviewing 30 people in 3 days and really selecting the talent? How about negotiating with a client, whether they're asking for too much, how to push back? All these soft skills are very, it takes ages to consume, to actually to master. And my recommendation is start as soon as you can, and always have this critical ability to say, okay, in this situation, I tried this and it worked. And in this situation, I attempted this negotiation. I was hard, or I was soft, or I tried to listen, or I didn't listen. So always be very self-critical and try to learn from that experience, and so that the next time you'll be successful.
That's a great advice.
Yeah,
Self-critical.
bottom line. Sorry, don't never underestimate the power of soft skills. They're really critical for your success, because in the end, attitude and energy is what separates you from other candidates.
Yes, that is your edge to an extent. And I would love to make sure that it gets conveyed that people skills, making sure that you listen and that you communicate and that you are catering towards a long-term relationship when you're dealing in the businesses, it's important, but also to build on those skills that are basic to MBAs, leadership, to build on the fact that you need to be a good negotiator, to go into those win-win situations that enable the process or the whole structure of a deal to go through, which is great to know and great to hear, and which takes me knowing that this is very challenging to do. To ask you, what got you interested in a role within consulting?
Well, in my first years, my first job was actually in investment banking, which probably half of the day I had to do a lot of operations and a lot of calls to clients. And eventually I said, I've been here for a year and a half, and I already know how this is, what this is about. So I got bored in an industry job. That's really the reason. I thought, I want more. I want to change jobs every 6 months without having to switch firms. Which consulting might be or might not be for everyone, because if you're very intellectually curious and you want to try new things all the time, and you get bored easily, then consulting is for you. Otherwise, just consider industry jobs as well. But yeah, consulting really needs a mindset and an attitude towards life that not everyone has it, and it's okay not to have it. But if you do, then I certainly recommend you try consulting, because it's very intellectually rewarding, and it's very fast paced, and it's a great career.
Sounds like there's a lot of thirst in terms of getting to know better the world and sharing those experiences and making sure that you're always on top of things and on the edge. So it's a constant learning, we could say. And
it is, and it's actually a very large toolbox of skills that you have to master. Contrary to other jobs where probably your financial skills and your modeling skills might be more important, but here really you have to use the whole set. Soft skills, hard skills, everything.
Definitely, you're dealing with making others people businesses thrive in X, Y, Z when they reach you. So you will have not only a responsibility to yourself, but a responsibility to them and to the customers they serve. So there's a lot of people at stake, and it is important. I can see how having all these skill sets come together, it's needed. Which takes me now to ask you a little bit before you decided that you wanted to be a consultant, and you saw that you had the skills to go through. And how did you manage that process of finding, after your MBA or during your MBA, that space for you, that role for you, that starting point to thrive your career up to this point in which you are right now?
Well, okay, I actually landed in consulting by mistake. Well, not by mistake, but it was totally random. While I was doing my industry job in banking, I said, I really don't have time to finish my thesis, so I need to take a break. So I quit and I finished my thesis and eventually finish my career. And so I was unemployed, so I went to my university career management center, and I said, what do you have? Say, all we have is this this consulting job with an independent, a boutique consultant. So I said, why not give it a try? And after a short process, I was hired, and actually in my first month, my boss called me, at midnight, and he said, I'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. at some little airport. I said, this is strange. So I got there, and actually we had to take a Learjet to go to a client side in another city. And I said, I like this consulting thing. I think it's for me. The problem is, after that, I never got into a Learjet again. And people think consultants got into private jets all the time, but no, it's we actually end up fixing PowerPoint presentations in crammed aircraft, airline seats.
With a person next to you asking, "What are you working on?"
Exactly. So that's our life,
And that's where the people skills comes in as well, because you got to know how to tell them without breaking the confidentiality that you need to have to a client, which is
exactly.
How do you do that?
Everything from that to talking to the baby behind you, kicking your seat, and and convincing them that So yeah, it's a lot of skills. After that, I was in consulting for about 3 years. And actually, my boss convinced me to do an MBA. He said, if you really want to give a hard shot at consulting, you should have an MBA. So that's how I got into Simon. And when I got to Simon, I saw that there were not a lot of consultants recruiting at that time at Simon, but so I.
How do you manage that? Because then you would have been like a gem. You're one of this little population that wants to go into consulting in a moment where finance is Simon's world. How do you navigate those waters?
Well, I don't know. I just applied to a lot of consulting firms, and actually CRA, Charles River Associates, was doing recruiting at Simon. So before the recruiter came, I did a lot of research on the firm. I actually called a friend that was working there and said, give me all the scoop. Tell me everything I need to know about CRA and how life is there and everything. So when the recruiter came, I actually told my friend, tell your recruiter that I am at Simon, and that I will talk to him after the presentation. So as soon as the presentation at CRA finished, I went to, I think it was John Mauer. I went to him and said, John, I'm Cesar. I'm really interested in consulting. I've done work in consulting, and I've also done work in an industry that is relevant to your consulting firm. And so I really want to work for you. And I think that gave me sort of an edge for the first interview. And that's how that's how I landed the second interview.
Showing that interest, that passion.
Yeah. So my advice is show passion. I mean, it's okay when you start your job search to to approach alums, but approach them in a manner that is also relevant for the alum. Don't send random emails to everyone saying, "Hi, I'm a student interested in strategy and pricing. Give me an hour of your time to talk to me about your experience at blank." Don't do that. I mean, that will just not work. But if you're interested in an industry that's relevant to that alum, say pharmaceuticals or energy or anything, just send an email, say, "Look, I'm really interested in this industry, or I have relevant experience in this industry, or whatever, and that, or in that region that you're working, or anything, something that relates to you, that relates a student with alum, that creates some sort of a very basic relationship." Or send your CV, or just send some information about yourself that is relevant. Don't just blanket bomb the alumni database. Be surgical about it, and also listen to the Career Management Center, because in my experience, something that really got me to ace my second interview is the fact that I did a lot of training in my mock interviews. The first time I did my I see Karen cheering in the back. It's true. I mean, the first time I saw myself on video, I said, I would never hire that guy. I mean, look at that level of energy. So for my second mock interview, I just ramped up the energy level and the enthusiasm, and I said, I really want to work for you. And that you don't want to interview someone who's very low energy. You think this person is not going to keep up with the pace of work that we do.
Right.
There's no sense of urgency. I don't see energy. I don't see passion. I don't want to hire this person. So I think a lot of what happens in an interview is really nonverbal.
Right.
It's not really what you portray as, hey, I got an A in pricing.
Or I did X project, or
yeah, I don't care. I want to know if this person is going to really be able to cope with the job and is going to excel. Right.
So there has to be a connection from what I'm listening, and that's vital, because you're working with human people, and that's what, as you mentioned earlier on, you're not getting anything from AI, you're getting it from people, and you have to be good people to get the good out of the people, right?
Exactly.
It boils down to bringing those connections, which is great. And let's talk a little bit more. Once you get at that second interview, how did that escalate to that final offer in which you said, yes, I am going to be a consultant for you guys?
Yeah, so I was flown to Boston for my second round interview. And actually, I was late for the interview. I thought it was half an hour later, so I arrived when people were started to be divided into interview rooms. And I was the only one from Simon. Everyone else was from Harvard, MIT, big name schools. And first thing I thought is, just because these people come from, top 3 schools, that doesn't mean they're gonna beat me in an interview, So I started the interview round, and just as for the first round interview, I ramped up, 2 notches the energy level. Here I ramped it up like 5. When they started asking me, how would you solve this problem for the case interview? I stood up and I said, can I use the board? And started drawing and started showing, and it's just the passion that you show. And so if you really want to get into consulting, practice mock interviews. Don't stop, be relentless about it, be methodical, watch videos, get into the consulting mock, sites, see a lot of examples, see how it's done, because that if you show up for an interview and this is the first time you do a case interview for consulting, you're never going to do it. It's like trying to do a GMAT, without it's the same, exactly the same thing. You have to put so much energy into knowing what they're going to ask you, and so there are those two things that an interviewer really wants to see. One of them is relevance. Whether that person is interested in consulting. Do they know my firm? Do they have an experience in the industries that we're working on? Number two is attitude and energy level, and number three is how well that person is really prepared to do a case interview. So those three things I would.
Very, very important to have the energy, to have the passion, and to be prepared, and to nail the most relevant parts of that case interview. And we do have here a program wing with Case in Point, Constantino, right? Mark, which is a great book and workshop that enables our students to know how to break it down in a consulting. But you mentioned something, it's not only breaking it down, it's, as we say colloquially, you grab the bull by the horns and you stand up and you demonstrate that you know what you're doing, and that means using the resources that you may have, and that will convey passion, that will convey commitment, and that will showcase what you're likely to do when you're in an environment with a client, and that's what they want to see at the end of the day. How would you represent that firm? Exactly.
You want to be articulate. You want to to show that you can that if that firm puts you in front of a client, you're going to be able to deliver the message and you're going to be convincing. If you're not convincing in an interview, don't bother.
Right. And this is something that we cannot highlight more. You got to convey and come out across as someone very knowledgeable. So that takes me being conscious of time to ask you, what resources are online or perhaps in traditional media, printed magazines or newspapers that you would recommend for our students to start including within their daily routine? This is what you have to read every day to make sure that you're on top and that you know what's going on. Let's start with those type of resources. What are your recommendations?
Well, I think actually Simon publishes, or it used to, a case interview booklet, right, with some examples.
Mm-hmm. They did too, yeah. And I'd love to get my hands on one again, Cesar. Yeah, we don't have the actual Simon Consulting Group club anymore. It's there, but it's in a different format. And they didn't keep that going. I would love to get my hands on one of those. But we do have some Ace the Case and other interview.
Let me look into my files. I might have that.
That would be lovely.
Oh,
yes. Thank you, please. Our students are rooting for it.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get in contact with one of the old SCG members to be able to grab one of those. So
yeah, I was a vice president at the consulting club, and I have all the information. I kept all the files.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Well, definitely we have to put you in touch with our leadership that starts this next year so that we can make sure that happens. Thank you for that, Cesar. That means a lot. That means a lot.
No, and I think it would be a great idea to revive the consulting club, because it really can put together all the students that are interested in consulting and share and do calls like this on with alums. Probably do remote mock interviews, probably, do whatever and share resources and experiences.
We do have it. It's just that it merged with operations technology as well. So they're doing consulting within a wide range of areas, which is interesting. But definitely what you're mentioning, it is done to an extent. This group brings students earlier in the year into workshops, and they go through cases and they explore the different approaches that you may have given the industry that you're talking about, but there is still room and opportunity to make it stronger. And what you mentioned about the guide just blew my mind. I love guides, so thank you very much for that. Besides this type of resources to prepare you in terms of your interview, what would prepare you, or let's frame it this way. What type of literature do you look at least weekly to keep yourself on the trends that are going within the consulting landscape? Is there any particular?
Not really. I mean, some large consulting firms have in their websites guides, or they have examples of cases that they do in their interviews. So I recommend you do that. But also, I mean, I think practice in real time, in real situations, is the best way. So the CMC used to bring alums into Rochester for a day and do rounds of mock interviews. I used to do like 8 or 12 interviews in a day. So if you could do that again, I think would be great, because it really exposes people to a friendly environment when they can receive good feedback on their interviewing skills.
That definitely is a great advice. I know Karen here is taking notes mentally, and this is gonna pop up, hopefully to the benefit of our students, and actually to develop that win-win relationship and connection with our alumni as well. Their family, this is a never-ending relationship, given that, well, we're here today, we might be somewhere else tomorrow, and the relationships that we build here are very valuable. But before we go, and given that you are an international student, just like many of our students right now, are there any particular advice that you would give to this segment of our student population in terms of what you have to do different in order to work with an American or an international company?
Well, as you know, being an international, it's always, I wouldn't say it's a handicap, but also, it's, you have to be as good as, as a domestic candidate in order to nail the job. So my advice is to consider jobs both in the US and in your home country, or in third countries. Just expand your scope. Don't just narrow your search to US based consulting firms, right? So that's one advice. Another one is, if English is not your native language, you have to really polish your skills because in an interview, that's the hello, the handshake, that's the first thing that the interviewer will know. If you shake the hand, or if you talk on a video, and your level of English is not flawless, that's going to create doubts. So my advice is, if by now your language skills are not that good, practice. Talk to people, watch movies, whatever. You have to make sure that your English language skills are up to par.
That is important, and the most important thing is practicing. Practice makes perfect. Rome was not built in a day, but it was destroyed in a day. So you definitely have to keep it up going every day, so you don't get destroyed in your career search. We appreciate the time that you have here with us, Cesar. We know that you have a very busy schedule. We don't want to take too much of your time. This video will reside within our archive, and we'll definitely share the link later on, so that if there is another insight that you perhaps might have like to tell a little bit more about, you can do so either in another session or via write-up, or perhaps we could have you here sometime again and enjoy your company.
Sure, I would like to help, and I still have a few more minutes if anyone in the audience would like to ask any questions or.
Sure. Guys, are there any questions that you would like to share to Cesar? I'll definitely turn this around so that we have a visual.
Hey, Cesar, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good. Steve Chu, first year MBA. I have a question actually about Arthur D. Little, the firm itself. It seems slightly unique compared to especially larger firms. And when looking up information on it, obviously there's not a ton of information out there. But one thing they're constantly pushing is the entrepreneurship spirit. Can you kind of go into that? I'm assuming since you're in Mexico City, doing the startup there with the company. There's obviously a huge amount of entrepreneurial spirit, but can you go in a little bit more detail about what kind of skills would be needed for that compared to, just going in a specialized area?
That's a good question. Well, Arthur D. Little is actually rebuilding itself. It's actually the oldest consulting firm in the world. It's from 1886.
Yeah.
And sometime in the early 2000s, it had some issues with over spending and over investing in .coms. So at that point, it sold a lot of its practices to other firms. One of them was Charles River Associate in Boston. So that's how I got into this school of consulting, so to speak, because everyone that I worked with at CRA was a former Arthur D. Little. So I think it's entrepreneurial in the sense that not only you have to do consulting work, but you also have to help in business development. For example, even if you're an analyst or a consultant, you are invited to join the business development calls for your market, which is something very rare. I don't see any larger consulting firms inviting the analysts to a business development. So if you're an analyst at ADL, you are expected to share your contacts in the industry, share your experience, just keep your eyes open for any opportunities. And of course, if you manage to be active in a sale process, you will get rewarded. So, in that sense, I think it's more entrepreneurial than other firms.
Awesome.
And the higher you get up in the ranks, obviously, the more involved you should be in both company building and as well as in business development. So it's not only about excelling in what you do, but also keeping your eyes open for either opportunities to sell or opportunities to improve the quality of life in your job and to make the firm more professional and more structured. So I think those are entrepreneurial skills that I got when I was the owner of my own firm and that I now have to use at ADL.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So it sounds like ownership. It's a key word that has to remain if you want to go into an entrepreneurial space. You have to feel you own it in order to convey the right recommendations and approaches.
Yes, and one final message, if I may.
Of course.
We are hiring Spanish-speaking candidates at the Houston and the Mexico City office. So if you are interested, please send me your resumes.
Well, definitely. We're doing.
I can learn quick.
There are great apps. I just started learning Portuguese with Duolingo. They haven't paid any announcement. But definitely do so. We're going to do it through your career advisor. So send a note to your career advisor saying that you join us at the #Simon Global event, that you met Cesar, that you are interested, and that he asked for your resume to be sent. And we'll make sure that it arrives to Cesar with a note that helps him identify it. And please include why are you interested, both and in Arthur D. Little, why are you passionate about?
Exactly. Any prior experience in the energy industry, especially oil and gas and power, and also in telecommunications, it's very helpful. And you definitely need to speak Spanish. Doesn't have to be a native speaker. You don't have to speak it 100%. But if you're 80% in Spanish, that's good for us.
So take notes, share the information with classmates that might not have been able to join us. Tell them it's available on mysimon.rochester.edu because the information that Cesar has shared with us is priceless. And we thank you for it, Cesar. We hope that you have a safe flight to Houston this afternoon and that you enjoy the rest of your week. We'll definitely keep in touch with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jorge. And thank you very much to everyone who joined.
Great seeing you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, good talking to you.
Bye-bye, Cesar. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.